Today in this video, we are going to talk about some such events in history that just hearing about them will make your soul tremble. And among them, some events are still a mystery even for scientists, and they have not been able to solve them yet. And if you have a weak heart, then you should leave this video right now, because today's video is going to be very disturbing. And if you have the courage to watch it, then make sure to watch it till the end without skipping, because very few people have the courage to see this. So without any delay, let's start the video. Today, everyone knows that in 1945, the United States dropped nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan, and many people criticize America for it. But those people are unaware of the harsh actions carried out by Japan. Before the end of World War II, Japan had crossed every limit of cruelty in several countries across Southeast Asia. One of those stories is the story of the Comfort Women. Who were the Comfort Women, and what connection does this have with today? We will tell you about it in today's video. Just stay with us until the end of the video. Comfort Women. In the pages of history, the term Comfort Women was used for those women who were taken by Japanese soldiers for their own comfort and personal use. You can also describe them as women who were forced into service against their will. Japan had kept Comfort Women confined in several countries. These women were placed in small rooms or brothels, where, as evening arrived, groups of Japanese soldiers would begin to gather. The soldiers repeatedly mistreated the women, and in a single night, many of them were forced to endure this treatment dozens of times. For many years, the women were kept in such places under the same conditions. The story of the Comfort Women technically begins around 1910, but its real historical phase is considered to have started in 1935. Before understanding the Comfort Women, let us give you a little information about the history of Japan. Until the 19th century, Japan was a largely isolated country that remained mostly unaffected by the rest of the world. But after 1868, Japan began interacting and building relations with other nations. Until then, Japan was considered a very simple and reserved country. In 1888, Japan created a constitution, and after that it also formed a military force called the Imperial Army of Japan. Friends, this army was extremely strong and powerful. This was the period when many European nations were expanding into other countries and turning them into colonies. Japan feared that another nation might try to take control of it as well, so it began expanding its own empire. In 1910, Japan brought the country of Korea under its rule, and this is where the harsh chapter of Japan's history truly begins. After taking control of Korea, Japanese soldiers regularly forced themselves on local women. Gradually, Japan's confidence kept growing, and it began entering other countries and taking control of them as well. There was a time when Japan had occupied several countries across Southeast Asia, including China, Korea, Indonesia, Vietnam, Malaya, Thailand, Burma, the Philippines, Taiwan, Macau, and Hong Kong. In many of these places, Japanese soldiers treated women as a source of personal entertainment. History shows that in order to satisfy their desires, Japanese soldiers carried out countless acts of abuse against hundreds of thousands of women. During this period, no one was spared. Even young girls between the ages of 8 and 10 were subjected to serious mistreatment by the soldiers. Japan had established its own comfort stations in many of these countries, where women were kept confined against their will. However, in many cases, Japanese soldiers carried out these harsh actions openly, crossing every limit of humanity. In 1937, in the Chinese city of Nanking, Japanese soldiers forced themselves on more than 80,000 women. This event is known as the Nanking Massacre. After this incident, Japanese soldiers faced heavy criticism, and Japan's commanders ordered them not to display such harsh actions openly. After that, Japanese forces began establishing comfort stations in different places. Women were kept inside these stations, which you could also describe as brothels. At first, Japanese soldiers mainly confined adult women and young girls, but when the number of women began to decrease, they crossed every limit by forcing even very young girls into becoming comfort women. You may be shocked to know that every week, all comfort women were given medical examinations. If any woman was found to have a sexually transmitted disease, she was removed and killed. Disabled women were treated in the same way. If any woman resisted the soldiers' actions, the soldiers would first assault her as a group, and then end her life. In a single day, women were forced to endure such abuse 30 to 50 times. The suffering these women went through is beyond what words can fully describe. These women were also given an injection called 606. This injection was used for abortion and to prevent pregnancy, but it had many severe side effects. It caused intense pain in the head, stomach, and throughout the body, and internal bleeding would often begin. Because of this, many women also lost their lives. The women who survived after enduring the Japanese soldiers' actions were never able to free themselves from this pain for the rest of their lives. Even today, a few women in Korea, China, and the Philippines are still alive who experienced these harsh events. Even remembering those moments makes their souls tremble and tears fill their eyes. Some women have also shared their personal stories with the media. One woman said that she was only 8 years old at that time. Some kind people had advised her to stay inside the house and never step outside. There were 4 members in her family, but one day, a bomb suddenly exploded outside their home, and several soldiers forced their way inside. The other members of her family were killed, and the soldiers took her away with them. She was locked inside a room where she was beaten regularly, and many soldiers repeatedly mistreated her. That woman was finally released from a comfort station in 1944. Another woman shared that she was 25 years old at the time when soldiers took her away. She had no idea where they were taking her, and she never learned what happened to her parents or her brother. The soldiers kept her as a comfort woman, and every day she was forced to endure abuse dozens of times. She said that whenever she remembers those events, she becomes deeply shaken. Many other women have shared similar experiences. One said she was taken away on a train to an unknown place and was repeatedly abused for several years. Another woman said that she prayed every day that the sun would not set and night would never come, because as soon as night arrived, the door of her room would open and soldiers would come one after another and force themselves on her. Comfort women were not even given proper food to eat. After the war ended in 1945, Douglas MacArthur ordered the closure of the comfort stations and directed that all the women be released. Around 1876, in a quiet town in France called Poitiers, a girl named Blanche Monnier lived there. She belonged to a rich and respectable family, but suddenly, she stopped being seen among people. Everyone assumed that she might have gotten married somewhere or was living secretly in another place, but the real story was far more frightening. After 25 years in 1901, the police received an anonymous letter. The letter claimed that the Monnier family had locked a girl inside a closed room in their house. When the police began their investigation, they discovered a horrifying scene inside a locked room on the upper floor of the Monnier house. The room was dark, filthy, and filled with a terrible smell. There they found the girl, Blanche Monnier, who had turned into little more than skin and bones. Her weight had dropped to around 25 to 30 kilograms. Her eyes had become extremely sensitive to light because she had not seen sunlight for 25 years. It was later discovered that her mother, Louise Monnier, had kept her locked away for 25 years, simply because Blanche was in love with a lawyer who did not belong to their social status. Her mother believed that this relationship was against the family's honor. Because of this, Blanche was confined inside a room for 25 years. She was given only a small amount of food to survive. When Blanche was finally rescued, she was completely broken, both mentally and physically. A few days later, her mother passed away, and her brother was arrested, but due to legal technicalities, he was also released. Blanche survived, but she spent the rest of her life in a mental asylum. Italy's Florence area saw a series of dark incidents between 1968 and 1985 that people started calling the Monster of Florence. The strangest part was that every attack followed the same pattern, and the person responsible was never caught. These incidents mostly targeted couples who were parked in cars at night or staying in isolated places. The attacker would arrive, fire a gunshot, disturb the scene, and then disappear without leaving any trace behind. It felt as if the location and timing were always carefully planned in advance. The first case happened in 1968. Then throughout the 1970s and 80s, the pattern remained exactly the same. Between 1981 and 1985, there were a total of 7 incidents in which 14 people lost their lives. In every case, the attacker targeted couples using the same type of gun and the same method. Police believed it was likely a single person who probably knew the local area extremely well. The most shocking part was that whenever police detained a suspect, another incident would happen shortly afterward. In the 1985 case, the attacker mailed a victim's body part to the police, which made investigators believe the person responsible was openly challenging law enforcement. At that time, the entire city of Florence fell into panic. The media started calling this person the monster because the crimes followed strange patterns that even investigators could not decode. Many theories were suggested. Some believed it was a lone disturbed individual, while others suspected an organized group. However, none of these theories were ever strongly proven. People in Florence became so afraid that couples stopped going out at night. Despite a heavy police presence, the attacker was never captured. Then, after 1985, the incident suddenly stopped. Even today, the mystery remains unsolved. Who the monster of Florence really was, and where that person suddenly disappeared. In 17th century England, the case of a woman known as Lady Di became widely known as extremely strange. People claimed that after her death, certain signs were noticed that created suspicion of something unnatural, almost like the vampire legends people feared at the time. After she passed away, she was buried much sooner than expected because villagers believed her body was behaving in an unusual way. Her color and stiffness did not look like a normal deceased body. The strangest part was that her face appeared unnatural, almost as if she were not completely gone. A few years later, when renovation work began in the graveyard, Lady Di's grave had to be opened and moved. But what people found inside shocked everyone. The body looked unusually well preserved. Her nails and hair appeared longer, and a large iron nail was found driven into her chest. People of that era immediately believed these were signs connected to vampire folklore, and out of fear, the body was quickly burned. However, according to modern historians, the appearance of growing nails and hair is actually a natural post-mortem illusion. Because the skin shrinks after death, they only seem longer. The preserved condition of the body could also be explained by a dry and cool grave environment. But the most mysterious angle is that some records suggest Lady Di may have been in a coma, and people mistakenly believed she had died and buried her alive. It is said that when the grave was opened, there were slight disturbances in the body's position, as if she had moved at some point. In California's Yuba County, a missing persons case from 1978 still confuses people today, known as the Yuba County Five. On the night of February 24, 1978, 5 friends, Ted, Jack, Bill, Gary, and Jackie, were returning home by car after watching a basketball game. But instead of going home, their car was later found in the snow-covered Sierra Nevada mountains, in a place where there was no clear reason for them to be. The road was in the completely opposite direction from their homes. The car was perfectly fine. It still had fuel, yet it had been left in the middle of the road, almost as if someone suddenly panicked and ran away from it. A few months later, when the snow melted, the bodies of 4 men were discovered inside a shelter. This shelter belonged to the U.S. Forest Service and was placed in the mountain area for emergency situations, allowing people to stay there during heavy snowstorms. The most shocking part was that the cabin had food supplies, matchboxes, and a heating system. Still, almost none of it had been properly used, as if they never fully tried to protect themselves. One of the men, Gary, was never found. To this day, there has been no trace of him. Another strange detail was that the shelter was about 32 kilometers away from the car, through heavy snow. In their everyday lives, the group was considered completely normal, which makes such a long and difficult walk seem almost impossible. Yet somehow, they reached that location and slowly passed away due to hunger, cold conditions, and confusion. Investigators have never been able to understand why 5 adults abandoned a perfectly working car in the mountains. Why didn't they fully use the shelter's resources? And the biggest mystery of all, what really happened to Gary? A man from Serbia named Bogdan claimed that his body had a strange quality that allowed metal objects like spoons, knives, coins, and even phones to stick to his skin. Without using any glue or tape, he would simply stand shirtless, and small or large metal items would attach themselves to his chest, back, or arms, almost as if his body were a small magnet. Local news outlets and TV channels even showed videos of him. Reporters observed that when he placed a small spoon on his chest, it didn't fall. It stayed attached, and he could even walk around without it dropping. However, when scientists examined the situation more closely, they said it was not caused by any magnetic field because the objects were not magnetic. Most of them were stainless steel. They suggested that it could be due to an unusual skin texture or thickness. If someone's body surface is slightly sticky or has more friction, lightweight objects can sometimes stay attached. But regardless of the scientific explanation, Bogdan from Serbia became a strange and entertaining incident for many people. Do you know that in history there have been incidents where people claimed dead bodies were brought back to life, where individuals survived for months without food, or where surgeries were performed without putting patients unconscious? All of this has already happened in history. For more details about these events, quickly click on the video appearing on your screen. I'll meet you there.